All right, let's dive right into this explainer and unpack a massive industry shift triggered by a seriously controversial announcement. We're talking about Grand Theft Auto 6. I mean, it's really not an exaggeration to say this is one of the most anticipated entertainment releases in human history. But when Rockstar Games recently opened up pre-orders, they dropped a complete bombshell that just sent shockwaves through the gaming community. They revealed that the physical boxed edition of the game is going to launch without a disc inside. Yep, no disc. It's literally just a code in a box. So let's explore exactly what this empty box means for gamers, why publishers are pushing so hard for this, and the massive debate it sparked around the very concept of digital ownership. You know, that shock is perfectly captured by gamers like Ben, a 24-year-old in the UK who covers GTA news online. Up until right now, even as digital downloads became the absolute standard, physical collectors like Ben could usually rely on getting a tangible disc for the big blockbuster releases. A lot of people had incredibly high hopes for a disc at launch, especially since Take-Two, Rockstar's parent company, previously hinted that a digital-only launch really wasn't the plan. So to suddenly find out that the maker of one of the biggest franchises ever is just abandoning the disc, it genuinely felt like a shock to the system for physical media advocates everywhere. Okay, so here's the kind of harsh, definitely absurd reality we're looking at. You're paying £70 or even $90 for a premium edition for an empty plastic case. It's essentially the world's most expensive receipt for a digital download. Online retailers have already confirmed that once you redeem this printed code, it becomes totally invalid. That's it. You can't share it with a sibling, you can't reuse it on a second console, and you definitely can't trade it in. You are essentially buying the illusion of a physical product, wrapped up in standard retail packaging, but entirely stripped of the actual utility that made physical media so appealing in the first place. Think back to 2008 with GTA 4 for a second. Buying a physical game was a genuine event, right? You brought home this heavy box, cracked it open to find a thick, detailed manual, and unfolded those iconic, massive maps of Liberty City. It was tactile. It literally felt like you were holding a piece of the game's world. Then, by 2015, the industry saw a huge slim down to standard discs with maybe a single flimsy paper insert. Fast forward to today, and we're staring at the ultimate reduction. The physical artifact of the game has just vanished. It's been replaced by an empty box containing nothing but a string of letters and numbers. So naturally, the gaming community is completely split down the middle on this. On one side, you have players like Canadian creator Alla Gurlix, who perfectly represents the digital-first gamer. She downloads everything directly to her console's hard drive, absolutely loves the frictionless convenience of never swapping discs, and is totally unbothered by an empty box because, well, she wouldn't bother going to a store to buy it anyway. But contrasted directly against that is Ben, representing traditional physical collectors. For him, the disc holds real functional value. An actual disc means you can lend the game to a friend, you can sell it on the secondhand market to recoup some cash, and you get to enjoy that classic unboxing experience, which has been woven into the DNA of major game releases for decades. But why now? Why is the industry feeling so emboldened to make this leap? Well, look at the hardware reality. Analyst Matt Piscatella points out a massive, growing percentage of hardware out there literally cannot play physical media anyway. Get this, more than half of all Xbox Series consoles in the US do not have a disk drive. Over a quarter of PlayStation 5s are exactly the same, shipping as digital-only machines. When such a massive chunk of your core audience has willingly opted for digital-only hardware, the industry naturally feels way more comfortable leaving the optical drive behind and just abandoning the disk format altogether. Now, beyond just the hardware trends, what's actually in it for the publishers? Breaking down the analysis from Video Games Chronicle's Chris Scullion, we see the very logical, albeit very corporate reasons behind this model. Part of it is absolutely security to prevent data leaks. Rockstar has suffered massive breaches before, and a code prevents the game data from being easily ripped from an early shipped disc and shared online before launch. It's also about ensuring players get the absolute latest, fully patched version of the game rather than an out-of-date build stamped onto a disc months in advance. And, cynically but truthfully, eliminating the manufacturing, pressing, and shipping of actual discs maximizes their profit margins on every single physical copy sold. 230 million. Let that staggering number sink in for a second. That is how many copies the previous game, GTA 5, sold. It reminds us that the Grand Theft Auto franchise is not just a popular video game, it is literally one of the biggest, most profitable economic forces in the entire history of entertainment. So when a franchise with this much power and cultural cachet shifts its distribution model, it isn't just an isolated incident for one title. No way. It sets a massive precedent. It basically forces the entire industry to watch, react, and very likely follow suit for all their future blockbuster releases. But here is where things get really fascinating. Despite that immense economic gravity, a full-on rebellion is happening at the ground level. Independent retailers like VGP up in Toronto are outright refusing to stock the code in a box version, stating a firm commitment to preserving the value of true physical game ownership. Lootbox Gaming down in Delaware is doing the exact same thing, pointing out that this move speaks volumes about the bleak future for physical AAA game releases. And P&P Games in Winnipeg has even launched a petition demanding a proper disc release. These indie shops are willingly leaving huge guaranteed profits on the table to take a stand and defend the future of physical media. So this all brings us to the real existential core of this explainer. What does it actually mean to own a game in 2026? We are witnessing a fundamental shift here. For decades, game ownership meant purchasing a tangible, permanent physical product. Once it was in your house, sitting on your shelf, it was yours, full stop. Now we're shifting to simply purchasing a revocable software license. You aren't really buying the game anymore. You are buying permission to play the game. And that permission is controlled entirely by the publisher and the platform holder, resting comfortably on whatever terms and conditions they decide. And this is where Ross Scott, the founder of the incredibly active consumer rights movement Stop Killing Games, really hits the nail on the head. He argues that the missing plastic disc isn't actually the main issue here. After all, a modern game on a disc can still be rendered totally useless if it requires a mandatory online connection to function, right? Instead, he points out that the lack of a disc is actually a symptom of a much larger, very consumer-hostile practice, the industry's notoriously poor reputation for disabling access to games that consumers have already paid their hard-earned money for. Let's actually walk through the life cycle of a modern game to see exactly why consumer rights groups are so terrified of an all-digital future. Okay, so a publisher sells you a digital license or a single-use code. You play the game, you absolutely love it, you sink hundreds of hours into it. But years down the line, when the game reaches its end-of-life support and is no longer profitable to maintain, the publisher switches off the servers. Poof! Suddenly, that game you bought is completely unplayable forever, because you only ever owned a digital code pointing to a server. Once that server is gone, your game is gone. Trust in corporate game preservation is practically non-existent right now, and this incredibly common cycle is exactly why. As we look toward that massive November 19th launch, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to chew on. When GTA 6 finally drops, what happens to the culture surrounding it? One of the defining hallmarks of a massive game release has always been the midnight launch, right? Gamers queuing up for hours in the freezing cold, chatting with strangers just to be the absolute first to walk out with that physical case in their hands. If the physical disc is truly dead, and the box contains nothing but a piece of paper with a code you could have just downloaded from your couch, are those iconic traditions gone forever? Is the absolute convenience of our digital reality truly worth the cost of our gaming traditions and, more importantly, our actual consumer ownership? It's something every single one of us will have to decide for ourselves as we enter this new era.